The Safety Mount family of mounted spherical roller bearings represents the pinnacle of safety and innovation, offering a shaft-ready solution with a built-in adapter mounting and dismounting system to streamline maintenance, improve application reliability, and enhance on-site safety for lower total cost of ownership. Before installation, ensure equipment is turned off using proper lockout-tagout procedures. Use required personal protective equipment. For sizes 3.5 inch and smaller, there are a few simple but key steps to follow for proper installation. Proper installation of our Safety Mount spherical roller bearing will be demonstrated using a 1/15/16 inch pillow block. First, inspect the shaft to ensure it is smooth, straight, clean, and within commercial tolerances. For proper installation, you will need the following common tools: Allen wrench, size 4 metric, drift or spanner wrench, hammer, marker or grease pencil, micrometer, straight edge, torque wrench. Dodge recommends using the Safety Mount Impact Spanner Wrench, ordered separately to simplify the installation process. All applications require a two-bearing system to operate properly. The Safety Mount family is offered in both non-expansion and expansion to accommodate shaft growth due to thermal expansion and the movement of the bearing during installation. The non-expansion bearing should always be mounted first and is typically mounted on the drive side of the application to protect the gearbox and/or motor from damage due to shaft expansion. The expansion bearing is mounted last for positioning purposes. The bearing is equipped with a single bolt lock plate, which is secured to the face of the lock nut. Remove the button head cap screw using an Allen wrench. Remove the lock plate and set it aside. The lock plate will be reinstalled after the bearing is mounted. All adapter mount bearings require any load to be removed before mounting and also assist with easing bearing drive up and minimizing the required mounting force for proper installation. Before proceeding, remove any load from the shaft. While holding the adapter sleeve, rotate the lock nut counterclockwise 1 to 2 turns. This will allow the adapter to fully expand. Slide the bearing onto the shaft to the desired location. If the bearing does not slide onto the shaft, rotate the lock nut counterclockwise to further expand the adapter. Repeat if necessary. The bearing lock nut now needs to be tightened to its zero reference point, or starting position. The zero reference point is defined as the point when the clearance between the adapter sleeve, shaft, and bearing bore is removed, and all mating surfaces are in metal-to-metal contact. This is achieved by hand tightening the lock nut clockwise using both hands until the lock nut can no longer be rotated by hand and the adapter sleeve firmly grips the shaft. It is important to note that it does not take significant effort to achieve zero reference and will likely require much less force or effort than installing other roller bearings. Verify that the zero reference point has been properly achieved by trying to slide the bearing axially on the shaft. If the bearing slides, tap on the outer diameter, or OD, of the lock nut with a rubber mallet and continue to hand tighten the lock nut until the bearing is no longer able to slide axially along the shaft. A few light taps on the OD of the lock nut reduces friction in the adapter threads, which makes the lock nuts easier to turn by hand. If the bearing doesn't move, then the zero reference point has been established. Once the zero reference point is achieved, mark a line on the face of the lock nut and adapter sleeve. It is good practice to mark the lock nut face in line with the slot on the adapter sleeve. Next, determine the appropriate amount of lock nut rotation required for mounting. The prescribed rotation ensures the proper amount of internal clearance is achieved without the use of subjective calculations or feeler gauges. This information is shown in the instruction manual supplied with the bearings. With a 1/15/16" safety mount bearing, the rotation of the lock nut from the zero reference position is 7/8 to 1 turn. It is best practice to rotate the nut to the maximum number of turns required and not exceed the maximum turns. Using a drift or safety mount impact spanner and hammer, rotate the lock nut the specified rotation from the marked zero reference point. Once the desired rotation is achieved, the bearing is secured to the shaft. To install the lock plate, locate a lock nut hole that is closest to the adapter slot. Install the lock plate found in the hardware kit with the lock plate tab inserted into the slot on the adapter. You will notice that the lock plate is different than the one found on legacy Imperial bearings. The new lock plate is reversible and designed to provide access to one threaded hole, eliminating the need for readjusting or further tightening of the nut. Once the lock plate has been positioned, insert the lock washer and button head cap screw through the lock plate into the lock nut hole. The fixed bearing has now been properly mounted to the shaft. To keep the housing in position, loosely install the base bolts. The expansion bearing is mounted the same way as the non-expansion bearing. The only difference is positioning the housing with respect to the bearing to accommodate shaft growth due to thermal expansion and the movement of the bearing during installation. Follow the same mounting procedure as previously shown, completing installation of the expansion bearing by inserting the base bolts into the expansion bearing housing. Ensure the bearing insert and base bolts of the expansion bearing are positioned correctly to accommodate shaft thermal growth. Once both bearings have been installed, remove shaft support. Verify that the bearings are aligned to the shaft within 2 degrees of total misalignment. Bolt down both bearings to the structure. The bearing assembly has now been properly mounted. Unlike competitive solutions, safety mount bearings feature a built-in dismount mechanism for a seamless removal. To properly dismount safety mount bearings 3 1/2" and smaller, first loosen the base bolts of the bearings and remove the load from the shaft. Next, remove the button head cap screw and the lock plate. Begin to rotate the lock nut counterclockwise using a drift or the impact spanner wrench and hammer. Continue to drive the lock nut counterclockwise until the bearing is released from the shaft. The bearing has now been properly dismounted. This concludes the mounting and dismounting demonstration of safety mount spherical roller bearings for sizes 1 1/8" to 3 1/2". For bore sizes 3 11/16" or 90 mm and larger, refer to the appropriate safety mount installation video. We have put product support at your fingertips. For our online selection program, visit ptwizard.com. And for our e-commerce platform, visit dodge.ptplace.com.